Welcome back. Before I get into chapter 2, I looked on Storygraph. It's the app that I keep my books, and they said that this particular book is very slow paced. So I just wanted to prepare you that it's going to be a slow paced read, okay? So here we go. Chapter 2. Are you sure you're okay? Kit asks. Is Estelle House comfortable? Olivia held the cell phone close to her ear as she watched Ray and Elise looking at the flowers in her friend's garden. Ray was big and handsome in a rough sort of way, while Elise looked as fragile as a butterfly. The two of them were so different they didn't seem to be the same species. Are you still there? Kit asked. Yes, Olivia answered. I'm here and listening. I heard you say you might have to stay in D.C. for a whole week. Which country are you trying to save? She cut him off. I know. You can't tell me. What do you know about Dr. Janine Hightower? Nothing really. My cousin Kel's friend Ellie Abbott swears by her. Ah, I see. Two mystery writers. Yes. Kit lowered his voice. Has something happened? You sound, well, distant. I just ran into a couple of very interesting problems, that's all. You're going to stay with Janine's patients and help out, aren't you? Olivia gave a sound that was half groan, half laugh. I'm not sure I like someone knowing me so well. I may have missed out on a few years, but I remember everything. So tell me, what's going on? Ray is a big guy, mid-30s, who probably grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, but it looks like he's pulled himself up in the world of sales. Now he wears Bond Street clothes, but I bet that he has a gang tattoo somewhere on his perfectly toned body. I hope you don't go searching to find out, Kit said. And the girl? Money and manners. She dresses like a street kid, but she probably went to Miss Porter's and Brian Marr. I haven't heard the whole story yet, but I think she tried to buck the system and she got locked up for it. As in jail? No, as in being held in a mental institution under lock and key. But it seems that Janine broke her out, hid her in the trunk of her car, and drove her across the country. Kit was quiet for a moment. I thought what I was doing was exciting, but you have me beat. My concern is whether you're going to miss me at all. I don't want to see our house until you're with me, she blurted out. Good, I like that. It's you who was the practical one and wanted to stay there alone. Are you saying you're the romantic one? Peacocks, well house, moonlight parties in the nude. They were all from me. Yeah, I think I'm the emperor of romance. Olivia smiled at the images of long ago that he brought up. I'm not so sure. When you get back, you need to prove it to me. I look forward to doing just that. They were silent for a moment, just breathing. I better go, Olivia said. The warrior and the fairy princess have stopped talking. Ray might start trying to sell her a mountain that may or may not be full of gold. What's his problem? He's trying to get the courage to tell his wife that he wants a divorce. Poor thing. My heart goes out to her. He's her entire life, but he's going to drop her. You think it's another woman? Probably. You know the saying. Men divorce because they have someone else. Women leave because they're fed up. No, I hadn't heard that one. He paused. Did you get fed up with me? You know I didn't. What happened between us was an accident, just fate. And two bratty kids and a peacock and Gaddafi? Olivia laughed. Good idea. Let's blame him. I do have to go. Ray is looking at his watch and Elise looks like she might drift away into a fairyland of her own making. Ah, my wife, the brilliant people observer. How I could have used your expertise when I was working in Morocco. We could have... Don't, she whispered. They had agreed not to dwell on what they missed in not being together all those years. At least not out loud. You're right. I better go too. The prez is waiting for me. The president? No, don't answer that. Just go. I love you. And I love you more. Keep me up to date on this. It's interesting. I promise. Reluctantly, they hung up and Olivia went into the garden. Ray and Elise were standing on opposite sides, lost in their own thoughts. Their silence made it flash across Olivia's mind that this woman she didn't know, Dr. Janine Hightower, had planned for Olivia to be with them. That would have taken some detailed organization, but it could have been done. As it was, the situation reeked of too much coincidence. An older woman was supposed to have been with them, but she dropped out. Was it just an accident that Olivia had been asked to accompany these two? She didn't think so. If you're ready to go, we can leave now. As she led them through the house, Ray picked up Olivia's suitcase from beside the front door and followed the women outside. He put the case in her new BMW, another gift from Kit. Olivia glanced at Ray's sleek Jag, something more suited for a bachelor than a married man. He closed the trunk. I'm getting rid of it and buying an SUV. Girlfriend pregnant? She said before she thought. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But Ray gave a snort of laughter. You are Janine's sister. Not yet, but I'm working on it, and I refuse to feel guilty about it. I've always wanted kids, and my wife isn't able to have any. If that makes me a bad guy. Olivia put her hand up. I know all about wanting children. And Ray, I don't judge. You can say what you want. It's my guess that the reason Dr. Hightower put you here with strangers is so you can talk. Ray groaned. This is going to be touchy-feely weekend, isn't it? Where's the nearest bar? It's not allowed, she was smiling. Did you and Elise talk? She nodded toward the young woman who had politely stepped away from them. Nothing but about how pretty the flowers are. I get the idea she came for money. You think? Ray laughed. She kind of oozes it, doesn't she? What's her problem? Daddy wouldn't buy her a jet on her very own? Now who's judging? Okay, I'll back off. But it's my job to quickly figure people out so I can sell them things. For her, it would be a Chanel and a Cartier. Bet she has a black Amex. Olivia didn't want to reveal confidence, but sometimes assumptions need to be stopped. Elise escaped authorities by being locked inside the trunk of Janine's car. No color of credit card would have helped if either of them had been caught. You ready to go? As she walked away, she called for Elise, who got in a seat beside her, and they left for the summer house. When she looked in the rearview mirror, she was glad to see that Ray still wore a look of astonishment. Good. Looking at someone else's problems often help you solve your own. It wasn't until 3 p.m. that Olivia was able to get away from her housemates. She had driven onto the grounds of Camden Hall, Elise beside her, Ray in his sleek car close behind. At the gate, young Pete, past 80 years old, waved them in, and Olivia went left to what had been the gardener's house. There was a plaque on the door that read Diane's Cottage. She figured it was probably named after Diane the huntress. Her mother said there had once been peasants on the property, so maybe the little house had belonged to the gamekeeper. Whatever it had been, the cottage was now so cute it almost hurt a person's eyes. It was stone with a tall roof punctured by 2 windows. One of them was round like an eye watching over the estate. Olivia hadn't been surprised when Elise wanted the upstairs bedroom with the window. It was small enough to be difficult to see into, but large enough for her to watch for anyone approaching. Olivia took the second bedroom and was glad she would have had her own bath. Let me read that again. Olivia took the second bedroom and was glad she would have her own bath. There hadn't been any discussion of the matter, but Ray seemed to know he was to stay downstairs. She was glad to see that the refrigerator and the small pantry had been fully stocked and wondered who'd done it. Janine, who owned the cottage, or had Kit called someone and asked them to do it? Olivia was learning that her husband had become a person who made others jump to do his bidding. It hadn't always been that way, she thought. When they met, he'd been a boy of 19, and all the world had been a wonder to him. By the time Olivia got her housemate settled, all she wanted to do was escape. Ray looked like a bull with 4 red flags being waved at him. Now that it was time for him to start making his decision, he had no idea where to begin the process. As for delicate, ethereal-looking Elise, for all her pretending that being signed into a mental ward and escaping inside a car trunk didn't bother her, she'd gone around the house pulling the shades down. Even with that, she sat on the far end of the couch, a pillow on her lap, and kept looking toward the back door as though she were ready to run through it. Olivia nearly ran outside, then stood there for a moment, breathing in the fresh air. Did she really and truly want to take on these 2 needy, children? Big Ray with his wild eyes look, tall, fragile Elise with eyes that darted about the room. Could she deal with them? She had to reassure Ray that he could indeed make a sandwich all by himself, and had to show Elise that her bedroom door could be bolted. Olivia tried to calm herself and look around. She was standing on a pretty flagstone terrace that was in a little garden with a short wall around it. She had an idea that the area had once been used for vegetables, but now had only a few shrubs. Surrounding the little enclosed garden were trees that needed pruning. Beyond that was a tall stone wall that encircled the entire property. Everyone in town knew that in the spring, young Pete hired brawny high school kids to assess the winter damage and repair the old wall. Roofs and walls, he said, that's the key to maintenance. Nowadays, he rarely left the ground that his family had looked after for 3 generations. Old Pete, young Pete. No one in the next generation of the family wanted anything to do with taking care of some old houses. As Olivia looked about the bit of garden with its scraggly scrubs, she thought how she'd like to divide it with crisscrossing paths. She'd use bark rather than gravel, so walking on it would be silent. In the middle would be an arbor with a bench under it. Along the sides, she broke off her thoughts. Was this direct? Ooh, there's a word. Hold on one second. Let me write that down. Derelict garden part of the enticement to get her to take on these damaged people? If so, who had thought of it, Kit or the unmet Janine? When Olivia heard a noise from inside the house, she left through the little gate and hurried toward the road they'd driven in on. But she avoided it. She didn't want to be seen. Both Ray and Elise had looked as though any second the question was going to come from them. What do you think I should do? Olivia dreaded hearing it. Maybe in other circumstances she could come up with an answer, but right now her own problems filled her mind. Olivia got problems? As she walked past the old stable, she looked towards Camden Hall. It was a big, sprawling, Edwardian house, 3 stories high, more glass than wall, as the saying went. It was a beautiful house, but it had that hollow look of a place that had been unoccupied for as long as anyone could remember. Behind the house was what was once a pleasant garden, all flowers and little ornamental trees. It was neatly trimmed, but was now mostly bare. Ahead of her was what she'd been looking for, the tall fence that Kit had recently had replaced. The old roses had been carefully pulled away from crumbling bricks. After the new fence was up, the pruned branches had been tied back on. In another year, they'd return in full glorious color. The fence enclosed River House, the place Kit had brought for her and they had restored while they were on their long honeymoon. Olivia had told Ray that she didn't want to see the house without her husband, and that was true. What she did want to see was a tiny island in the shallow river that ran in front of the house. It was where she and Kit had made love back in 1970 and been caught doing it. Even now, so many years later, the memory made her smile, how Kit had protected her. Back then, young Pete had only recently taken over the caretaker's job, and he was zealous at it and very serious. That day, he heard voices and had run home to get his shotgun. Olivia and Kit, both naked, their clothes on the ground, had looked through the trees and scrubs to see young Pete standing on the other side of the water. He was coming toward them with a gun in his hand. They looked at each other, arms entwined, bodies bare, eyes wide. Did they call out and tell young Pete that they were trespassers? But actually they were. Had it been the father, Olivia would have identified herself. But the son was a different matter. Who knew what he would do? Kit took over. He grabbed a handful of mud, smeared it on his face, and stuck a big leafy branch into his hair. Yelling at the top of his lungs and looking very scary, he ran stark naked over the bridge and toward the wall that surrounded the estate. Young Pete was so flabbergasted at the sight of the naked, wild-looking man that he stood and stared, his shotgun lowered. Kit was almost over the wall before young Pete recovered enough that he raised the gun and took aim. Olivia, who'd been on the girls' softball team in high school, picked up a rock the size of her fist and threw it. It hit young Pete in his lower back. As he spun around, the shotgun accidentally went off, and the unexpected recoil sent him face down into the water. Olivia, naked as the day as she was born, grabbed their clothes, ran across the bridge, and headed for the wall. She leaped onto the stump and propelled herself up. As she knew he would be, Kit was leaning over, both his arms held out to her. He pulled her up and over. With clasped hands, they ran through the wooded area. When they reached the edge, they stopped and looked at each other. She used Kit's shirt to wipe the mud off his face, and he kissed the bloody scratches on her body that had been made by the stone wall. It wasn't until after they made love on the grass that they saw that Olivia Brazier was missing. They halted, fear in their eyes. Would they be identified through that, arrested for trespassing? But then Kit's eyes began to sparkle. How could a piece of underwear identify its owner? Was it that pink one with the rosebud in the center? Kit asked. The very one, she answered. They began laughing and didn't stop until they got back to the huge old plantation, Tatwell, where they were both living and working. After that, just the mention of the word rosebud sent them into pearls of laughter. As for young Pete, when he went to the sheriff with the pink satin brassiere and demanded that they find the owner, he set off laughter that didn't die down for 20 years. The sheriff said, "We'll have a town-wide search to find out who it fits." "Like Cinderella's shoe," the deputy said, "just a different body part." "When duty calls, we must serve," the second deputy said. The men looked at Molly, the dispatcher, who had on her usually tight sweater. She was a 36 triple D and the bra was a 34B. The men were smiling at her as though to say, "You first." "In your dreams," she said, and went on typing. The story spread as only gossip in a small town could. Young Pete was constantly asked if he had identified the trespasser yet, asked if he needed help in looking at mugshots of possible suspects. Some wit took a photo of the found article and made it into a wanted poster. $1,000 reward for the Satin Bandit. Please call me. One by one, every male in town had crossed out phone numbers and put his on it. It was that place Olivia wanted to see. The house held no memories except that she and Kit had thought it was beautiful. She saw the back of the house first, 3 stories with a long 1-story addition to the side. They agreed that would be Kit's office. The idea was that he worked there, but the truth was that neither of them could imagine being in the same house, but rooms apart. They had so very much time to make up for. They'd been together for one glorious summer, then separated for decades. Too much time lost. Quietly, slowly, she walked past the house, then looked back at the front. There were lots of different heights of roofs from all the additions that had been tacked on over the years. One tall window had a rounded top. It was said that in 1930s that had been an artist studio. In the 50s, it had been made into a kitchen, and that's the way she and Kit had left it. They hadn't wanted an island, which to the two of them was a modern concept, but a table where one could sit while the other cooked. She wasn't tempted to peek in the windows to see the restoration work. To her right was a little round brick building. It had been used to store garden equipment, but Olivia and Kit agreed that it was too pretty for that. So far, they hadn't decided what else to use it for. Ahead of her was the old bridge. It was weathered and splintery, but caught in the grain of the old wood were flecks of the blue paint that had once covered it. That day, she and Kit had made love on the island. He said, "It should be lacquered red, 20 coats of it." Laughing, kissing, she agreed with him. Lacquering the bridge red was on their list of things they planned to do. She took her time crossing, remembering every second of that long ago day. She ridden piggyback on Kit across the bridge. The island was small, created by the man who built Camden Hall. The river, deeper back then, had been widened to form a large pond in front of the house. The excavated dirt had been piled in the center, the edges reinforced with stone. In its heyday, it must have been a fisherman's dream. At the far end, they found the remains of what may have been a hut, something to sit in while waiting for unsuspecting deer to come to drink. Kit had said it was a place for lovers to meet. At their age, all it had taken was the mention of lovers to get them to tear off their clothes. They tossed them on the ground at the far end of the island, then fall down on the mossy surface that had once been a fisherman's hut or a place for lovers to meet, or the purpose Olivia liked least, a place to hang deer carcasses. When she got to the end of the bridge, she looked around. The landscaping had changed. Years ago, it had been kept mowed, and there was a path edged with little woodland flowers. Now, it was just weeds and overgrown trees that darkened the place. She raked her shoe through the grass until she saw the bits of gravel. Stepping over some stout fallen branches, she went to the far end of the islands. The foundation stones of the little building were nearly covered now, but they were still there. Bending, she touched one, smiling at the memory of the day. She could almost feel their lovemaking, hear it, smell it, feel the sun coming through her clothes. Kit's strong hands on her breast. Her head was back, wanting more and more of him, to become one with him, body, mind, and soul. Suddenly, she became dizzy and had to sit down on the stones. A bit of sunlight came through the trees, and she held out her hand to it. How different, she thought. In her mind, she remembered smooth pink skin, but the sunlight showed lines, veins, and a couple of those brown spots that no amount of sunscreen could prevent. She snatched her hand back, balled it into a fist, and for a moment she closed her eyes. Over 40 years, she thought. That's what she and Kit had lost. She stepped up onto the stony foundation. On impulse, she lay down on it and looked up at the trees. On their honeymoon, Kit had talked about his diplomatic service, even about the 3 scary years when he infiltrated young Gaddafi's new regime. He told her of the months in the hospital after an armed vehicle had rolled over with him in it. His pain and rehabilitation had been excruciating. Olivia talked of running the appliance store and how she'd open more stores. She discovered that she had a knack for business. What they didn't talk about were their marriages. They decided that one afternoon in Paris, they were sitting at one of their lovely outdoor cafes, having coffee, and Kit started telling about the birth of his son. When I held him in my arms, I didn't know I could feel such love. He was red-faced and hairless, but I thought he was the most beautiful thing ever put on the earth. And Gina was... He broke off when he looked across the table at Olivia. She was smiling, but there were tears running down her cheeks. His son had not been their child. It hadn't been Olivia in that bed. Kit took her hand in his and kissed the palm. There was no one else, he said softly. It has always been us, together or apart, just us. Olivia was swallowing hard, trying not to let the tears overwhelm her. They had full lives. They just hadn't been with each other. Kit kissed her index finger. What? He kissed her second finger. The hell? Kissed her ring finger. Am I going to do? He put her little finger between his lips with that bloody theater. His question made her laugh and the tears disappeared. It was a relative who brought Kit to Summerhill in 1970, and it was another relative who brought him back many years later. Kit told her he hadn't been worried about returning and possibly seeing her. He thought that if he did meet her, he'd feel nothing. Surely all those years apart with the lives the two of them had experienced would make that one summer seem long ago and far away. Maybe they could even laugh about it, become friends. But it was the opposite. Kit saw Olivia walking on the streets and everything fell away. To his eyes, she was as beautiful as she'd been when he met her. He was afraid to approach her, afraid she'd tell him to get out of her life. And too, Kit knew himself well enough that he feared his pride might make him leave and never return. Instead of direct confrontation, he set up a trap to lure her to him. Like a spider, Olivia had said later. Exactly, he said, a huge and very hungry spider. During the first long ago summer they spent together, Olivia had been preparing for a Broadway show. She was to play Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice. She would have been on the stage that summer, but there'd been a fire in the theater. While it was repaired, the play had been put on hold until the fall. In his attempt to re-win Olivia, Kit bought an old warehouse in Summerhill and turned it into a theater. He then set about casting the play, Pride and Prejudice, of course, even finagling his famous actor cousin into playing Darcy. There were a lot of hiccups along the way, and one of the players ended up in prison, but Kit got what he wanted. He and Olivia married not long after the final performance, and that day they set out on their own long honeymoon. Really? Kit said. That warehouse cost me a fortune, and the remodeling cost even more. With his every word, Olivia was smiling more broadly. What 60-plus-year-old woman had a man do all that to win her? Want to run it? He asked. Me? Olivia sat back in her chair. You mean be director, producer, stage manager, and actress? All of it. Why not? No, she said. That's not for me. In that long ago summer they spent together, she'd believed she wanted to become an actress. When she won the lead role, she was sure that was the beginning of her glorious career. But once she was there, all she thought about was home and Kit. He had disappeared without a word, and it had taken the heart out of her. She looked back at him. We'll have to find someone to take it over. Don't you have some relatives who like to run a little local theater? Kit smiled. Olivia had teased him about his huge family, and he had been as glad to get away from them as she was. I'll put out the word and see who wants the place. Maybe the town will have a new play every few months. It could bring in some revenue. Are you ready to go? She realized he'd done what he planned to and had replaced her tears with a smile. It was why he was so good in the diplomatic world, why the press called and asked his advice. Thank you, she said as he pulled her chair out for her. Anything for you. He took her arm in his. After that day, their boundaries were set. They would never mention the very personal things that had happened to them in the years they've been apart. But still, Kit had said that he'd come to despise his ex-wife Gina. Every rotten thing she screamed at me was true, and I hated her for so clearly seeing the worst parts of me. When you don't love someone, everything they do is intolerable, Olivia replied. Exactly. That had been the extent of their discussion of his marriage and divorce. As for Olivia's marriage, she never mentioned it and Kit didn't ask. She was glad of that because she didn't want to confess that her husband had had a long-term affair. Actually, he'd had a whole other life. What was especially humiliating was that Olivia was sure it was her fault. The year after her summer with Kit, Alan Trumbull, a recent widower, had hired her to work in his family appliance store to answer the phone and take care of the accounts. She saw that he was overwhelmed with a baby and a store that was going downhill, but Olivia meant to keep to herself and not get involved in other people's problems. She just wanted to work hard enough that she wouldn't have the time or energy to think about the rotten deal life had handed her. But after weeks of sitting quietly in the store, she broke. Watching Alan fumble with a baby and invoices and salesmen made her admit defeat. She couldn't continue to sit there and do nothing. She pulled the baby from Alan and began directing his life, his business, his child, his house. As the months went by, Alan stepped back and let Olivia handle it all. He never actually proposed. He just mumbled, "I guess we better make it official." And 2 weeks later, they were married. Their wedding night had been quick, perfunctory, loveless. She stayed in bed until Alan went to sleep. Then she got up and went over the quarterly tax reports. It was either do that or spend the night crying. Night after night, she thought, Kit, where are you? Why did you leave me? Why was I not enough for you? Over the years, she used work and domestic duties to try to block out those questions, but her lack of help made her anger rise. Alan used to say, "You're so much better at business than I am, Livy. You don't want me holding you up." Then he'd go off to play golf. It was only when he was dying of cancer that she found out that Alan didn't know which end of a golf club to hold. She sat beside him in the hospital and listened to his story of how he had a secret life with a quiet, plump, sweet-tempered woman named Willie. They had a daughter together, and it was Olivia's hard work with the appliance stores that had supported mother and daughter. There even been enough to send the girl to a good university. His confession about his love for his other family had so shocked Olivia that she couldn't speak. Alan had taken her hand in his. "Please, Livy, don't be angry and punish me. Let me see them, please." But she hadn't been angry. She stood up and looked down at him. "Alan, I never knew you had such courage in you." She started to leave the room, but then turned back and kissed him on the forehead. She would never have predicted it, but she was glad to find out that he'd had some joy in his life. Heaven knew she had never given him any. She'd fulfill all the work and duties, but nothing she did came near to achieving true happiness for him or herself. Willie came to the hospital. Her pretty daughter drove in from Florida, and Alan's son, Kevin, put his arms around all of them. In an instant, Olivia became the outsider. She wanted to walk away and leave them alone, but Willie was an incompetent, but Willie was as incompetent as Alan was. The two of them, Alan dying and holding on to Willie with her endless tears, looked to Olivia to take care of everything. And she did. Doctors, medicines, alternative treatments that for a while gave them hope. Then they all fell on Olivia. After Alan's death, she made the funeral arrangements, and she was the one who held Willie while she cried herself to sleep. At the funeral, Olivia knew there would be questions about who Willie and her daughter were. If she told the truth, all sympathy would go to the wife. Olivia was the wronged woman. She'd given her life to Alan and his son Kevin, and everyone in town knew that. And what thanks did she get? Her husband had set up housekeeping with a woman who was older, plainer, and less intelligent than Olivia. Unappreciative bastard. Yes, Olivia could have made people hate Alan Trumbull. She could have played the matriarch and gained lots of sympathy. But only she knew the truth about her part in it. She decided not to sully her husband's memory. It was only when the will was read that Olivia got a true shock. With the help of a prestigious law firm in Richmond, starting the moment he knew he was dying, Alan had managed to get everything put in his name. And he left the entire business to his son. Olivia got the house that she had found and remodeled, and she got the retirement plan that she had set up. But everything else went to Kevin. As for Willie and her daughter, Alan had made a trust fund for them years before. For a while, Olivia had been so angry at how he tricked her into signing papers that she was tempted to tell people about his second family. To destroy the memory of Alan being a nice guy would get him back in a big way. For the second time, she didn't do it. Alan, so very cowardly in life, had found the courage to tell Olivia what he thought of years of being on the receiving end of her managing his life. In death, he'd taken away what had kept Olivia so occupied that she couldn't think about the summer of 1970 and the aftermath of it. She turned the keys over to her stepson, then tried to occupy herself. Gardening, church work, cooking for fundraisers. She did them all. She became the person who was asked for help whenever anything was needed. The town considered her a saint. She'd done so much for Alan and Kevin, and now she was dedicating herself to the town. Did the woman ever think about herself? They wondered. As for Kevin, Olivia did her best to stay out of his life. When he left the stores to run themselves, she said nothing. When he married a woman who ordered him about, Olivia felt it was her fault. It's what she had made Kevin think a wife should be. Nor did she speak out when she saw Kevin and his wife Hildy spend masses. House, car, trips, lavish wardrobes. The appliance stores faltered and then failed, and Kevin was left deeply in debt. When Olivia sold her house, cashed in her retirement plan, and bailed her stepson out of debt, the townspeople began to speak her name in whispers. A true saint of a woman. Olivia moved into the back bedroom of Kevin and Hildy's big house, the one Olivia had paid off and helped out, meaning that she more or less became their unpaid servant. That had lasted for 14 months. Then Kit Montgomery had returned to town, put up his theater, and everything changed. Except for the damaged lives, Olivia thought. Broken lives could never be fully healed. And that is the end of chapter 2. As I was reading this, it brought back memories. So I had read, I can't remember, I think it's Lavender Morning by Jude Deveraux. And this book is number 3, but this is the Kit and Olivia story. It dawned on me. I was like, oh, now I remember. So if you followed me in that book, we get to see how Kit and Olivia's story transpired. But I have some thoughts. Well, no, I can't say that because in that book that I read, I think that was number 2. I can't remember. I wanted to know why Olivia was so mad at Kit in Lavender Moon. I guess in this book, we're going to find out why she's so mad. But she had to do what she had to do to survive in life, right? But wow. But they are hitting on some gems. I hope y'all catching the gems that they are hitting on. There was one word. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but I am going to make a definition video. So stay tuned for the definition video. Be right back. Okay, welcome back to the definition portion. The word that I was stumbling over and didn't know how to pronounce, I probably don't know the definition, but we're going to figure it out. It's spelled Derelic. And this is how it is pronounced.
Derelict.
I think I said derelict. Derelict. It's an adjective in a very poor condition as a result of disuse and neglect. Shamefully negligent of one's duties or obligations. Okay, let me go back to where it was in the chapter. Okay, so here we go. She broke off her thoughts. Was this
Derelict
garden part of the enticement to get her to take on these damaged people? And it makes sense. It's neglect. Okay, so that's the end of the definition video and end of chapter 2. I shall see you in the next chapter. Bye for now.